Yeah, so we started recording. Yeah.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the July meeting of the City and County of Swansea meeting. First item on our agenda today is apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, I've got apologies for absence from Kerry Evans, Alison Pugh, Christine Richards, Rob Stewart and Andrew Stevens.
Thank you. Are there any others? Louise, got your hand up?
I believe Mary Sherwood has also given apologies.
Okay, thank you.
Could I say Councillor Richard Lewis as well?
You can say it, yes.
And Councillor Kerry Evans as well, please.
We've had Kerry's.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 2, disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests. Are there any?
I circulated my email yesterday. There was nothing that immediately jumped down to myself in terms of having to declare an interest, but I do appreciate there are, I think, 2 councillors that do wish to declare a personal interest only.
Okay, are there any other members feel the need to declare anything? No, no one indicated.
Councillor Mary Jones on the call?
Yeah, sorry, we are a little bit late actually joining. Mary is trying to log in. I think she can, do you want to declare it now on here? Yeah, there we are. We'll share the computer a minute.
I want to declare a personal interest on item 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and ditto, actually, I declare the personal interest on item 11 as well, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 3 is to approve and sign the minutes of the previous meetings as a correct record, pages 1 to 22. Page 1 is present. Page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19, 20, and 21, and overleaf 22. Okay, someone move those.
I we move the minutes.
Thank you.
I move, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 4, written responses to questions asked at the last ordinary meeting of council. They're on page 23. Okay, that there for information. And then announcements of the presiding member. Okay, I have a few announcements. Again, sadly, I begin with condolences. It's with sadness that I refer to the recent death of former City Councillor TPC Morgan, who was known as Patrick. Patrick represented the Sketty ward between 1984 and 1988. I'm sure some of you present today will remember Patrick from the old City Council days. Also, it's with sadness that I refer to the passing of Bethan, the wife of Martin Caton. Martin was a former MP for Gower and a city councillor. Bethan recently passed away. Councillor Robert Smith and myself were present at her funeral on Tuesday of this week. Very sad event. But, there we are. Can I ask you all then to sit silently with your cameras off for a few minutes as a mark of sympathy and respect? Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Okay, on a brighter note, I refer to the Queen's birthday honours. Congratulations to all the following individuals who were given honours in the recent Queen's birthday honours list. Ryan Jones was awarded the MBE for services to Rugby Union and charitable fundraising services in Wales. Isabel Marie-Anne Everett was also awarded the MBE for public services and for future leaders development. She was latterly the chair of the Wales Audit Office. Mark Andrew Jones was also awarded the MBE for service to science, technology and maths. He was a member of the Ethical Hacking Services at the DVLA. And then Dr. Elizabeth Andrea Davis was awarded the BEM for services to the NHS and all the patients during the COVID-19 pandemic. And Dr. Davis was a consultant geriatrician at Morrison Hospital. Also, David Lloyd Jones was awarded the BEM for voluntary services, and he was founder of the Second Chance. That concludes my announcements. Next item on the agenda is announcements for the Leader Council. I understand that Councillor Hopkin and Lewis are deputising today. Do either of you have any announcements?
No, could I just come in on that point, presiding member? That you'll be pleased to know there are no announcements from the leader this afternoon. Or the announcement I got is the leaders at last having a well-earned break.
Good, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. And then public questions. Okay, questions must be submitted in writing no later than noon, the working day prior to the meeting. And questions must relate to items on the agenda. And questions will be dealt with within a 10-minute period. The first person to submit a question was a Mr. Andrew Crowley. Andrew, are you with us?
Don't think he is, Chair, so whether you want to move on to the second question and see if we can get him here. So Mr. Williams is present. So.
No. Okay. The second questioner was a Mr. Jason Williams. Jason.
Hi, very much. Thank you for the opportunity to attend today. I'm attending on behalf of the Mumble Skate Park Association, and my question relates to item 13, question 6. I have 3 questions, if that's okay. Is the council able to provide an update with regard to the recent judicial review in respect of leasing the land at Llyndarrow to Mumbles Community Council?
Go on, ask your questions and then we'll come back with me.
In respect to the alleged offer of £500,000 specifically to fund a skate park in Swansea, can the council confirm whether this offer was ever made? And if so, was a site for the development of the skate park ever discussed? And then the third question, excuse me, during the Scrutiny Committee and Cabinet Committee, where the leasing of the land at Llyndarrow to MCC was approved, the level of positive feedback and engagement for the redevelopment was noted and applauded. It's understood that the recent judicial review is supported by 7 local residents with significant financial backing. Bearing in mind the overwhelming community support for the redevelopment that has been evidenced and the very small number of individuals who have voiced concern, does the offer of funding, or the alleged offer of funding, change the council's view on this matter, or is it resolute in its existing decision, which has been welcomed by the vast majority of supporters?
Okay, thank you for those questions.
Thank you.
I understand that a response will be made by the Cabinet Member for Delivery and Operations and Investment, Regeneration and Tourism, Councillor Robert Francis Davis. Robert?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Williams, for your questions and for putting them in writing in advance. Question number 1, is the council able to provide an update with regard to the recent judicial review? This is still part of an ongoing process, and so therefore it would be inappropriate to make any remarks until that has gone through the appropriate process. Your question 2, in respect of the alleged offer of £500,000 specifically to fund a skateboard park in Swansea, and can the Cabinet confirm whether this offer was ever made? To my best knowledge and belief, no offer has been made of this amount, and I've checked with officers and they know of no offer being put to the council. Question 3, during the scrutiny committee, etc. Again, it would be inappropriate to answer this question while it's still part of a judicial review. The reason for that is until the outcome is made and then officers make their report, this could be subject to come into Cabinet at a future date, and it would be wrong to predetermine any decision at Cabinet until all reports are made, and then we will treat with those on its merit at that time. So it is not right to prejudge any outcome until we know. I hope those answers your questions. Not be what you might want to hear, but it's giving due consideration to the questions and making sure that one stays at the right side of the law.
No, I completely appreciate that, and I really appreciate the chance to ask the questions and the time that Mr. Francis Davis has taken to look into that and respond. Very much appreciated indeed.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for those questions, Mr. Williams.
Mr. Crowley's still not present, Chair, so we have had the written question, so maybe the Cabinet member wishes to give a written response or via email. Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, I'd be guided by the Chair. I've been submitted a question in writing by Mr. Crowley. I'm happy to answer it now verbally and or in writing or by email. I'll take your lead on it, Chair. I don't know, does process allow me to answer it now in Mr. Crowley's absence, or?
Question we read out. Do you have the question in front of you?
I can find it, but I haven't actually got it in front of me. I'm familiar with the question.
It shouldn't be present to ask the question.
Okay.
So the Cabinet member wants to answer it, he can answer it, and then it's on tape then. So
well, then, okay. Well, the question that was sent to me in writing from Mr. Crowley, Chair, was sorry.
Okay, you know what the question is. You're at an advantage to the rest of us.
Yes, I'll read the question out as well. The question that was sent to me was that in the lead up to the Senedd elections, there was a social media campaign hosted against the proposals for the development of a safe walking route on Pentre Road Bridge in Gravesend, between Gravesend and Portadillas. And it was under a banner of Council's chaotic scheme to develop a walking route that will create traffic chaos on the Pentre Road Bridge. And the question is now that the bridge is complete, were those fears realised? So that was the merit of the question, and it's quite simple to answer, really. I mean, yes, if Mr. Crowley was here, I would be able to say to him that I was very disappointed at the time and leading up to and during the construction of the new safe pedestrian crossing. So for those councillors and members of the public listening not aware, that bridge has never had a safe crossing on it. Pedestrians have had to walk in amongst the traffic to be able to cross that railway bridge. This was something we had been mindful of for many years, and the opportunity when Network Rail were doing repair works to the bridge landed on our laps, so that we were able to install a much needed and desperately needed safe footpath across the bridge. That was what we were trying to do and have since achieved. Now, in order to do that, there were a lot of campaigns going on and social media campaigns saying that this would cause traffic chaos in the area because it was leading to single file traffic. We we spent a lot of time informing the public and anybody who wrote to us and complained to us that would not be the case. We were confident in our traffic management planning schemes very much like we did we used the same traffic planning schemes and systems as we did on the Broadway scheme. And for those of you who can remember, many people said that would never work and never be successful. And we stuck by our guns, and we were confident in the technology we were using, and our predictions came true. And exactly the same as what happened on the Pendray Road Bridge. Since it has reopened under traffic light control system, we have both a very safe pedestrian route for people to cross the bridge and a free-flowing traffic system. The delays, if you can call them that, whilst waiting at the light, are averaging around 30 seconds. And if that's a very small price that people need to pay to allow for and cater for safe pedestrian crossing of that bridge. We have not had a single complaint about traffic users, road users on that road since it's reopened. And as far as I'm concerned, and the officers who designed and built it, it has been nothing short of a roaring success. And thankfully and gladly, people can now walk across that bridge safely. So a lot of the campaigning against the scheme was born out of misinformation and ill-informed information, Chair. I'm very disappointed at the time, but I think for the proof of the pudding's in the eating, and we've got a completed scheme that is highly successful and is a major, safe scheme, another safe scheme within Swansea Highway Management. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, next item on the agenda is the Governance and Audit Committee Annual Report 2020-21. They're on pages 25 to 42. We have the Chairman of the Audit Committee, Mrs. Paula O'Connor, to take us through the report. Welcome, Paula.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to present this report to the Council, which has been prepared by the Chief Auditor and the Democratic Services Support Officers, and it reflects the work of the Audit Committee. I don't intend to go through the report in absolute detail, but I will reinforce some of the comments that I've made in the foreword of the report. Okay then. Okay. But first and foremost, I'd like to pay tribute to all staff and officers of the Council and how admirably they dealt with the unprecedented challenges brought about by the COVID pandemic. And I would also acknowledge the efforts to maintain continuity of governance throughout that period. It really was remarkable, the efforts that were being made and the grip that was maintained during that period of time. I'd also like to highlight that during 2020, we received a number of reports that enhanced the information flows to the Audit Committee around performance management, partnership and collaboration, and value for money. The presentation of these three reports addressed the shortfall that we've had in previous meetings, and I will extend my gratitude to officers of the Council, particularly the Deputy Chief Exec Adam and Ben and Richard Rowlands, who I'm sure you're all familiar with. It really is enhancing the richness of the information coming through to the Audit Committee and the assurances that the Audit Committee is receiving. I would also reflect on the presentation of the assurance framework that we received back in 1819, which aimed to improve the Council's grip around the governance, risk management and control that supports and informs the assurance framework and the assurance statement. However, for obvious reasons, during 1920 and well into 2021, the development of the electronic risk management system was delayed, and the Audit Committee members have expressed concern around the absence of a robust system. But during the forthcoming months, we have had assurance that things are rolling out fast. And Richard has given us assurance that the reporting mechanism into the Audit Committee will certainly be complete within this next couple of months. I would also make comment around the efforts of the Chief Auditor and his team in progressing with the plan alongside the significant pressures of the pandemic, and for responding to requests from the Audit Committee to provide additional information to give us that level of assurance and understanding of the risks that the council were facing. It was an amazing effort that was being made, and Simon Hopkins and his team are absolutely done the council proud in achieving what they have achieved. During the preceding period to the end of March, the Chief Auditor highlighted on every meeting the possibility of reporting a limitations opinion because of the inability to cover some of the areas of the plan. And that's been transparent in its reporting. And again, during the period, I've had ongoing discussions with Ben and Simon regarding that opinion to make sure that was appropriately recorded in the governance statement. And I'm satisfied everything that is in that governance statement was right and proper and complete. In March 21, the Chief Auditor presented the draft internal audit plan, and the committee were able to approve that plan with a caveat the assurance had been placed on the Chief Internal Auditor's assessment of risk in the absence of some of the assurance gaps in the system. But I'm satisfied that the plan, as it stands, is fit for purpose, and I would be welcoming the Council's approval of that plan of the Chief Auditor. It would be amiss of me not to mention Audit Wales and the development of the audit recommendations that they make and the tracker to ensure that those recommendations are complete. That's not fully implemented as we speak, but I must reflect on the work that the Scrutiny Committee plays in ensuring that those audit recommendations are progressed and monitored and reviewed regularly. But this is just in improving the governance arrangements around that tracker. And I'm working with Richard and Adam to see how we can make that happen with the least resource applied to it. I've also met with the Chief Exec and Deputy Chief Exec during the year to discuss the ongoing concerns that the Audit Committee's had around the risk management, as I've mentioned earlier, around the workforce pressures, clearly, and therefore the record savings plans, which are hand in hand with those. And I'm pleased to say recently I've had updates from Adam that some of those workforce issues are beginning to progress with some additional bolstering of the teams. With regard to the anti-fraud services that the Council are receiving, we've received regular reports from the counter-fraud lead, and we've also received an update regarding the progress being made against the recommendations in the Raising Our Game Tackling Fraud in Wales that was produced in March 21. Progress is being made against those recommendations, but the Audit Committee did note that there's further work to be done. Those are the key things I wanted to restate within the report, but I'm happy to take any questions. And if there's anything of the nature that I'm unable to answer, I'd be more than happy to come back.
Thank you. Any questions from anyone?
David Hopkins.
Deputy Leader, Councillor David Hopkins.
Yeah, I remember. All I wanted to do was to thank Paula for the hard work she's done and carried out the report today with due diligence and the work that not just her but the Audit Committee have done. It is really appreciate the work that goes on behind the scenes. So on behalf of the leader, I certainly wanted to put my thanks on record.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Yes, thank you, Paul. Okay, the recommendation is that Council note the content of the Governance and Audit Annual Report 2020-21. Okay, so I'll agree to note. Yes. Okay, any dissenting voices? That's the easier way to deal with it. If there aren't any, good. Okay, takes us to item 9, the Asset Management Plan, beginning on page 43. Councillor Hopkins.
Sorry. like to take this report. This report got 6 strands to it. From I think it's part of corporate landlord responsibility, disposal, property investments, regeneration and economic development, and capital programs. And also, last but not least, but our collaboration with others and working with other people to try to deliver the best for the city. Quite proud of this report in front of us today. And it's a report that's a 5-year plan that will take us into 2025. Quite ambitious, but I think it's very achievable with the commitment behind it. So I think in 3.4, I think we will all agree that some of the costs attached to, particularly to our income and related to the COVID, obviously gives us some concerns, but it just gives an ongoing commitment that we will be working with our tenants to get the best. So happy to take any questions on the report, but would formally like to move.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Councillor Andrew Lewis.
Thank you, Presiding Member, and thank you to Councillor Hopkins for bringing this report. I warmly welcome it. It mentions in 3.5 that some of our larger strategic sites are on hold at the moment, and that's because the HRA lead housing officers with more homes development and property services are working closely together in order to address the significant deficit of social housing across Swansea. And so they've been working together with JLL as a consultant, evaluating the sites, and we will both be looking at joint ventures and joint development opportunities. Never before has property services and housing worked so closely together, and long may that continue. And I'm very pleased to formally second the report, Presiding Member.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Councillor Chris Holly. You're on mute, Chris.
I'm sorry, Presiding Member, it just took me a bit of time. Under the heading Corporate Landlords, there is a number of issues, and I expect it'll be difficult for either the deputy leaders to give an answer tonight. I think the first one is the action further work regarding commercialisation of cleaning services, and the output was to discontinue the corporate arm of cleaning services. I wonder if we could have some more information about that, and also about the depot review and the design print moving to the Civic Centre. There are a number of other issues around there, but I think for the convenience of time, but also for the fact that I think the answers are going to take a bit of time to get through. I wonder if it's possible that I'll write to the deputy leaders and explain why we want some more clearer answers to some of those questions. It also applies to some of the disposals as well.
Could I just welcome that? I'm probably more than happy to sit around the table with you and have that discussion, or do it formally in writing. So no problem.
Around the table would be fine, Councillor Hopkins. Excellent.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both. Councillor Will Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question. I'm looking on the agenda. I can't actually find the point I was looking at earlier. Sorry, so apologies on this. But when I was reading the report earlier, I looked at I think it was JLL who did a review of our assets, commercial real estate, I assume, back in 2019, and I read somewhere that the report was that they were of low quality, and that since then the portfolio's improved. I was just wondering, what they meant by low quality of assets. And a second question was, is the council actively looking to invest in property outside of the county, or do we purely focus on inside the county? Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I take the last point first, particularly on investment? I chair the property investment board, and I can give a commitment that we don't look for investment outside the city. Everything we buy is not just for yield; it's very much strategic. So there is certainly no ambitions for us to buy outside this authority. Everything we do is strategic for the best of the city.
Thank you, Presiding. Oh, sorry, Cabinet Member. I was just going to comment on the low value sites. because I think the JLL consultants are actually referring to some of the sites that we have considerable amounts of land in the east of Swansea, which is clearly of lower value than our sites in Gower in the west. So what we're trying to do as part of our joint venture programme is to balance the higher value sites together with the lower value sites, package them together to make them more attractive for joint ventures and for partners, development partners to come forward. So hopefully that clarifies that comment by JLL.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yeah, before I start, my apologies. I wrote down a few points. One of my computers is not working yet, so I'll have to relate to the page, the numbers. At page 50, it actually mentions about, we purchased 3 income generating assets. What can you remind me what those assets were again, please?
The top of my head, we had quite a large portfolio that we bought up in the enterprise zone. We've also purchased quite recently the one we talked for some time on the entrance to the city centre opposite Sainsbury's, the court opposite there. I'm sure if you would come to my rescue with a third. To be honest with you, Jeff, I can't remember what the third is, but I will definitely get back to you with the third.
Okay, right. On page 51, it actually mentions about investigation of investment properties. There's a 5 million fund that's exhausted. It needs topping up. I assume it's going to be topped up with 5 million again. Where's the money coming from?
On that, I will ask Ben to sit down and give us a written report on the finances of that.
Oh, I'm sorry again, actually reading this, page 57, there's a backlog of maintenance within City and County of Swansea assets in the region of, I haven't put the figure down, but I know it was £200 odd million. How are we going to actually tackle that backlog?
We manage that quite on a risk basis. I must say we manage them. It is a risk we carry, but it's very low risk, and we do it on a priority basis. And we have topped up the fund on several occasions to try to get on top of that backlog of maintenance.
So all the risk is low risk?
I wouldn't say it's low risk. We manage that risk. I mean, every property investment portfolio have got risk, but we manage that risk quite successfully.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lewis, do you want to come the answer to that?
Yes, please. If I can add to that, obviously our portfolio and asset portfolio also includes our schools, and they are regularly reviewed and reports are carried out. And as Councillor Hopkins has said, it's done on a priority basis. So we have our capital maintenance report on an annual basis in terms of the budget and where the budget's spent. And the majority of that money is spent in improving our schools. So that is a big part of that £211 million that's referred to.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Robert Francis Davis, do you want to assist with the answer, or is there something separate?
No, it's on this. I have the pleasure of sitting on this committee with, which is chaired by Councillor Hopkins, and ably serviced by Mr. Jeff Bacon and Ben Smith. And when we look at purchasing a property, we take into consideration how they let, the quality of the lettings, how long unexpired leases, and whether they are full repairing and insuring leases that are on these properties. We look at the yield that they give the council. It has never been a better time for borrowing money because we are borrowing money long term at a low interest rate. And in fact, it's probably a no-brainer for us to invest in these good quality purchases, giving us a good yield and actually helping the local authority in bringing money in into our portfolio. But we take good advice. We're very careful of what we buy and making sure that it is strategically part of what we want to achieve in Swansea, and at the same time financially viable.
Thank you, Robert. I noticed Ben Smith, the Section 151 officer, has indicated. Do you want to assist Ben with this answer to the question?
Yes, please, Chair, given that Councillor Hopkins deferred to me, and to save giving a written answer, as councillors have indicated, I do sit with other colleagues in terms of giving advice on the investment fund. As the report indicates, it is a notional fund, and those members that have asked me questions in either the finance performance panel or the regeneration one will be aware that whilst yield is not the primary consideration, as has rightly been said by Councillor Hopkins, the ones that I've agreed to progress do require sufficient yield to wash their face. And so there is a complex interplay between the capital financing element, which you'll be aware is below the line in the statement of accounts and in the outturn, and the income that is generated from rental yields above the line. But that's what I mean by it being notional. So effectively, where we have had to make decisions, we have brought forward, as is normally the case with extensions to the capital programme, FPR7 reports to Cabinet to make decisions wherever possible in the public domain, because this is public money. Obviously, on some occasions, they've had to be in camera, given the commercial nature of the transactions, but it's in that sense that they are notional. So I grow the overall borrowing envelope. Councillors will be aware that I've committed to a borrowing envelope which is underpinned by taxpayers in terms of the public sector subsidy. These fall outside of that, and that's why the reference is to it being notional. I hope that intervention will avoid me having to give a written answer and assists Councillor Hopkins in the formal full answer given to the question raised. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Ben. Okay, Councillor Wendy Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at page 58, paragraph 12.3. And this refers to something entirely different, which is the intention of increasing tree cover and other measures as part of a biodiversity plan, etc., to support the offsetting of carbon emissions. What I'm trying to establish, and I think I may have asked this in some connection before, are we going to have anything put in place to measure net gain in terms of tree cover? And I ask this not because of loss of trees through development, but also loss of trees through disease. And we only have to think of the significant loss of trees via ash dieback. And of course, you have such things as photophora as well, and various other things that damages trees. That means they have to be removed. So is there going to be any way of giving council a clear indication of whether we are actually gaining in tree cover, or ultimately we are still losing? Thank you.
Thank you. Who's going to answer that?
I think Mark Thomas.
Chair, I can try and assist in that question. It's a very good question, but the challenge we've got is, if you look at tree cover across Swansea, we are only in control of the tree cover on Swansea City land. And if you reference, for example, ash dieback, that is a massive challenge. But that affects probably more ash trees will be felled on non-council land than on council land. And we have no control over that, and we have no insight knowledge of how many trees will be felled by private landowners, for example. So we can, to a certain extent, we would have a measure of what we have done, but that doesn't give you a broader picture of what is going on in our community of Swansea. So the information that we could provide is only partial. And secondly, and I think I have mentioned this before, with the ash dieback programme, it's so resource intense for our teams of arborists out there that when we launched into it, obviously there was a concern raised by all of us that, we are going to have to be removing lots of trees, and we wanted to consider and look at how we're going to replace them. And from the onset, we could see that they would have to be two totally separate programs, because we just have not got the resources currently to fell trees remove them and dispose of them, and at the same time plant new. So there's going to be a staggered approach even within the city and county of Swansea. But that's the dilemma with these sort of statistics and figures. At the end of the ash, felling exercise, we will be able to tell you, how many trees we've removed. But again, that only reflects on Swansea. So if you're looking at it from as I said, how this affects the whole well-being of Swansea and all of our areas, it's a snapshot of what goes on with our property, and that's the disconnect here. And there's nothing I'm aware of that we can do to correct that. I mean, I'm sure if we asked landowners, etc., to give us that information, they would willingly give it. But that's quite a big exercise to go around trying to collect all of that. But it's not through a lack of will, it's a lack of knowledge of what's going on, because people have ash trees in their gardens and will be felling them as individual trees, etc. And that's going on without our knowledge or involvement,
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Councillor Andrew Lewis.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Just to add to Councillor Thomas's response, for information more than anything, Welsh Government have got a planned strategy for forestation across Wales. Of course, we will be looking at our land assets, and where they're not developable and not suitable for anything else, we should be considering urban forests or rural forests, because we know there's a shortage of timber. We know timber is very expensive as well. And so for Wales to embark and to stay on the journey in terms of a significant development programme where timber will be front and centre, we really need to, for the long-term strategy, to plant more trees, leave them grow for a further decade perhaps, so that they don't become just suitable for biomass, for pallets, for fencing, but they actually reach construction grade and we can use them to build buildings and build more homes. So we will be looking at that, as all councils will be, in terms of where we can plant more trees as well.
Thank you, Andrea. I noticed Welsh Government are running a scheme which was in the news this week, planting sequoia trees just outside Brecon, and these are in danger in their native California, but they're actually planting thousands in California of these sequoia trees in Wales.
A point of information, Chair, don't forget that one giant sequoia was felled in my ward, covered by a TPO, of course. So it was a bit of a tragedy and a significant loss.
Absolutely, and the council took the necessary action.
Indeed.
Councillor David Hopkins.
No, I just want to come in. Can I just assure members today that this year alone I've signed off with but I'm pleased to say, in partnership with Deb Hill from our National Environment Department, I have signed off thousands of trees to be planted in this city. And we have got a very ambitious thing to try to get as much tree cover as we possibly can. And we'll give a commitment that we will get a further report to council on our plans, what we want to do with tree cover in the city. But I've got to say, we've got a fantastic National Environment Department that wants to grow as many trees as we possibly can throughout this city.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. Good. Irene Mann. Councillor Mann.
Hello, can I just say how much I support the tree planting and the wildflower planting. There is one group functioning in the upland living streets, that has concerns about wildflower planting. It can cause problems with health problems, and it can also destroy indigenous planting. Could I ask for confirmation that the wild flower planting followed by our council is absolutely safe and does not have any negative effects on daffodils or anything else?
Do you want me to answer that, Chair?
Yes, please. Yeah, because it's the wildflowers are loved by loads of people, by loads of residents throughout Swansea, and I don't see why one little group should be so antagonistic towards that wildflower planting.
I can assure Councillor Mann and all other councillors that the methods we use for wildflower planting are safe for use,
Absolutely.
safe to wildlife, safe to our environment,
Yes.
and all our methods are approved. So we don't do anything that puts the environment, people, or animals or wildlife at risk at all.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, no other indicators. There's the recommendation on page 43 is to approve the asset management plan for the period 2021 to 2025.
Yeah,
Gareth,
yeah, I'm just going to launch the vote now, members. Machines are a bit slow, so it should be launched now. I hope members can see it. Can everybody see it?
Yeah.
I can't see it, sorry.
Okay. For any members that can't see, we'll come back to you after the electronic vote. We'll take your vote verbally then. Come on. Yeah, we can add it. I can add. Has everybody voted? I can't get up the screen.
80%. Got a couple of hands going up. Terry Hennigan, Councillor Hennigan.
Yeah, it's not about, I've done the vote for, for myself. I'm just asking.
No, Terry, we've taken a vote.
Yeah, I voted.
So we can't discuss anything else.
Okay, go on. I'll come back after then.
Yeah. Councillor Fitzgerald, have you voted? You're on mute.
Sorry, I have submitted. I had difficulties, but you should have had it.
Good.
I have support. I've sent mine, Chair. Kevin Griffiths.
Thank you. John Curtis.
Yeah, I haven't been able to vote yet, but I'm voting for.
Thank you. Joe Hill.
Yeah, voting for.
Thank you.
Any other members need to vote verbally?
I haven't had it on my screen, Chair.
Okay. Are you voting for, against, or abstain, Councillor Hannibal? For. Thank you. There we are. I'm going to close the vote now.
Chair, sorry, I had my hand up and it went off. I wasn't able to submit, so I was voting for.
Thank
It's
you.
Carol,
Thank you.
Chair Gordon Walker's got his hand up as well.
I'm telling you now.
Yeah, I'm voting for as well.
Thank you, Gordon.
Okay. So we've had 59 votes.
8%.
And 98% for and 2% are against. I can't see the exact numbers, I'm afraid. So it is carried. Yeah.
Have they abstained or
No,
against?
against. No, there's 2 abstentions, Matt. Yeah, 2 abstentions.
Okay. Right, Councillor Hennigan. You're on mute, Terry.
Hi, John. Sorry.
You're on mute, Terry. Start again. Still on mute.
Yeah, I'm doing it, mate. Right. I was going to ask, are we doing a roll call? Because if we done the roll call, it'd been easier for you then when it came to the vote.
No, we're using electronic voting. Okay. Next item is item 10, membership committees. Councillor David Hockin to present.
Thanks, Presiding Member. I've got nothing to add to the report. It's just to move the names as submitted.
Okay, straightforward recommendation. Anyone against? No, thank you. Item 11 is the amendment to appointment of the Lord Mayor's cadets, which is for information only. But again, Councillor David Hopkins, please.
Yeah, could I, thanks, Presiding Member, could I just put on thanks to to thank the Lord Mayor, and particularly to our armed forces champion. I think this is a common sense approach where we make this amendment so we recognise each of the cadet services. So I'm more than happy to.
Thank you, David. Okay, that's for information. Item 12 is scrutiny dispatches, the impact report, which is discussion, information. Peter, do you want to, Councillor Peter Black? Are you with us? No?
Yeah, yes, I am here. Sorry, I just couldn't find the mute thing. No, I'm happy to move this as submitted, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Peter. Item 13 then takes us to members' questions. Okay, we've got 30 minutes. It's now 8 minutes. Yeah. Right. Question 1. Councillor June Burtonshaw, do you have any supplementaries?
No, thank you, Presiding Member.
Thank you very much. Question 2, Councillor Peter Black.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, the Cabinet Member, for the answer. I understand the problems with the NEAT team because many of the members of those teams are vulnerable, and obviously with the pandemic, it's difficult to know when going to be able to come back. I'd be grateful if the Cabinet Member could give us indication when he's aware of that, not now, obviously, but in the future. But in the meantime, will there be more discretion available to the council teams to try to deal with some of the issues which they have dealt with, particularly where you get fly tipping in well-used unadopted lanes, which is can be very difficult, which the NEAT teams have helped to clear up in the past.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Black, and thank you for by way of an update since the question was submitted and responded to. We have the NEAT team have, in a small way, returned just 2 people, in fact, because of social distancing and supervisory needs. We've only been able to allocate 1 service user with a supervisor in each vehicle. So there's 2 people have started back, but because of obviously having to observe all the guidelines, and as you said, they are in vulnerable groups, and we have to have parental consent and with the support of social services to roll this out as well. So it has started just shortly in a small way, but it will build up, and as guidelines are relaxed and you know, because I think they are keen to come back into work, but obviously we have to be protective of this group of people. In the meantime, yes, we have a project team at our disposal within the council, and if you do find that there are any particular black spots or blighted areas within your wards, please feed that in. I mean, they currently out there doing exactly what you mentioned now, and we are reacting. We're trying our best to react to some of the difficulties that we face in, particularly around our beaches and beauty spots. We're having to put extra resources in there anyway. So yes, feed your requests in, and we are looking to supplement what the work of the NEAT team was doing. Obviously we can't replace them totally, we can't do all of the fantastic work that they were doing, but certainly I would encourage ward councillors, if you've got these blighted areas within your wards, just feed them through the normal channels.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
The NEAT team are keen to come back. I think I'm correct in saying that almost every member is keen for them to come back also, because they do an invaluable job. They're absolutely brilliant.
Yes. Yeah.
Councillor Irene Mann. Irene.
Oh, I just wanted to thank Councillor Mark Thomas for his wonderful work with Street Scene, who have been absolutely fantastic and cleared up a load of lanes in our area. And I mean, they're a wonderful initiative, and the NEAT team as well when they can come back, but Street Scene I've met with them on a number of occasions, and the work they've done in the area is fantastic. Just wanted to thank Councillor Mark Thomas for all his work in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene.
Thank you.
3 then, Councillor Cyril Anderson. Do you have any supplementaries, Cyril?
No supplementaries, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Question 4, Councillor June Burtonshaw. Any supplementaries, June?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Question 5, Councillor Chris Ollie. Any supplementaries, Chris?
Thank you very much, Chair. On this question, number 5, this morning we had a scrutiny board and we were told that the council are meeting with Cador to talk to them about the future use of the Civic Centre. Just to say that I look forward to that, the report back from that meeting to see if and when this building is listed, what we can actually do with it then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Question 6, Councillor Linda Tyler-Lloyd. Any supplementaries, Linda?
No, thank you. The questions I was going to ask have been answered, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Question 7, Councillor Penny Matthews. Any supplementaries, Penny?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Question 8, Councillor Wendy Fitzgerald. Wendy?
Yes, thank you very much for the answer to this. Just a couple of brief questions. It mentions financial support somewhere in the answer. Is there any way of getting an indication of what this is likely to be in terms of amounts? And I understand too that there is a bit of a difficulty securing permissions, and this has got to be achieved before pickings can be undertaken. It's just really to have assurance that this business around permission will be expedited as soon as possible. I think that would be a big help to those that are trying to promote this initiative, which I think is a very positive one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mark?
Yeah, I can get you details on the financial support. I don't actually have the amount at my disposal, but I can give you that in written form. And yes, you know, if there are delays with obviously we have to make sure that picking is a short season. So we will make sure that wherever we can, we will do everything we can, obviously, to allow that to happen on our land. We wouldn't want to delay unnecessarily so that the fruit is lost. So yes is the answer to that one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Question 9, Councillor Phil Downing.
Yeah, thank you, Presiding Member. I was going to ask the Cabinet Member that Pentre Bridge, there was a vast number of complaints before this work commenced, and I was going to ask the Cabinet Member how many complaints we've had since this bridge is opened. But I got to congratulate the questionnaire on the question 7, as he read my mind, and Mark has already answered the question. So thank you anyway, Mark.
Okay, thank you, Phil. That takes us to question 10, Councillor Mike White. Mike?
Yes, thank you, Presiding Member. Yes, I can supplement you, please. First of all, I would like to thank the Cabinet Member for his comprehensive reply, and also to see the continued commitment to the rollout of the 21st Century Schools programme in the City and County of Swansea. I'd like to ask the Cabinet Member, would you agree that the school environment is paramount for the children's confidence and learning?
Absolutely, Councillor White, and thank you for the question. Through you, Presiding Member, I think obviously what we've learned in the last year emphasises the importance of the classroom environment, the school environment, and that is something that's been reflected in the investment that this council, along with Welsh Government, has made through the 21st Century Schools programme, and also our own commitments in the capital maintenance budget. No doubt Councillor White will take particular delight in some of the schemes that are local to him. £15 million in Pentre Hafod School, 250,000 in Bryn Hyfryd Primary School, and the refurbishment of the toilet blocks in Plas Mal as well. And I know those are investments that Councillor White will take particular interest in.
Thank you, Robert, for your, I think that's your inaugural question on members' question as Cabinet Member for Education and Learning. Okay, then, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, that concludes the part A of the councillors' questions. Takes us to item 14, which is the notice of motion. Councillor Chris Holly, are you going to move it, Chris?
There we are. Okay. Thank you, presiding members. I have great pleasure in moving this notice of motion, and I also understand that the Labour group on the council wish to support this as well, and some of the members on it, and we are quite happy that when a letter is sent, that their names are added to it. Can I start by saying I find this quite ironic, in as much as this has been another one of those exports, I think, from America, where we've seen a massive amount of legal wrangling over ID cards, I'm sorry, voter ID, and the backlash that that's produced over there. And I believe this is part and parcel of a government that wants to introduce some sort of rationale to keep minorities away from voting. And I think it's really, really sad. In 2016, Sir Eric Pickles prepared a report, and in that report, it clearly stated that there could be no movement on this without any sort of trial or any sort of understanding of what the process could operate like. In May of 2018 in England, a number of trials were held, mixed trials, some were with polling cards, some with photo ID, and some with mixed. There is a long report, which I have no intentions of going through tonight, because that will shorten the summer. The report, the Evaluation ID Pilot Report 2019, issued by the Cabinet Office in July of 2019, basically what it said was there was no evidence that the system of using polling cards was no better or no worse than anything else. And as such, the conclusion was that the operation of the use of polling cards was by far the simplest and easiest system to use. The idea that people take their photo ID to a polling station actually increased the perception that there was fraud. And in those areas where that was carried out, there was a great deal of concern, not just amongst the general population, but by many of the political parties, that there was no fraud, but this idea that you have these IDs just tries to encourage that. In closing my proposal of this, I would say there is an issue, and an issue around about postal votes. And over the last couple of general elections, there has been a number of prosecutions. But I have to say the number of prosecutions have been so small, and the numbers involved so small, they make no difference at all to the election of any MP or any political party. And I would say that this is just a gimmick on behalf of the Conservative Party to try and whip up some sort of support for a system which, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Our democracy is not broken in as much as this voting system, and I think we should leave it alone. Thank you, presiding member.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Peter Black, to second.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second this motion. Chris mentioned postal votes, and in fact, as Chris pointed out, there are more cases of alleged fraud in terms of postal votes than there is in-person voting. And just to look at the figures for in-person voter fraud, or alleged in-person voter fraud, in 2014 there were 44. In 2014 there were 21. In 2016 there were 44, and the 2018 2017, and that amounts to, and wait for this, 0.09% 0.00063% of all the votes cast in those particular elections. That's the Electoral Commission's figures. So the justification for introducing voter ID is being put across as voter fraud. It just doesn't exist in any numbers or any to justify the sort of cost and expense of doing this in particular. Now, in 2018, there were pilots in Watford, and 2019 in Derby. They found a strong correlation between the proportion of each ward's population from an Asian background and the number of people not issued with a ballot paper. There were In 2019, the Democracy Volunteers Group carried out a staff survey claiming voters were refused a ballot paper having no ID in 21% of polling stations. And during the 2019 pilots, the Electoral Commission found up to 2,083 people were initially turned away for not having the necessary ID with them, and as many as 758 did not return to the polling station to cast their vote. Now, the issue is clearly that not only is this not justified in terms of the number of alleged fraud cases, but it is clearly having an impact where it has been piloted in preventing people from voting. And the people who are being prevented from voting are those who do not have ID cards as a matter of course. Many of them would not normally, as a matter of course, vote for the Conservative Party or the Conservative government who are currently in power. Now, the government estimate there are 3.5 million electors, or 7.5% of the electorate, have no acceptable piece of photo ID. Their scheme envisages that the councils themselves will issue an ID card to these people so they can vote. Now, in our case, that would just apply to general elections because, of course, local elections and Senate elections are the responsibility of the Welsh Government. But that means that there's going to be extra work for our staff. It's going to be extra expense to the council. And I think more concerning, there is going to be potential conflict on the polling stations where staff are having to turn away people for not having ID cards, people who will desperate to want to vote in a general election in particular, and who may get who may become upset, I think is the mild word, because they're being turned away. It will hit turnout, and it will leave, and it will hit turnout amongst those parties who are not currently in government. In my view, this is classic voter suppression tactics, as seen in many states around the United States, and it is being imported to this country to give advantage to the ruling party. And I think there are concerns not just for the way it's being implemented, but also to the way it's going to be implemented and the impact on this council's finances and this council's staff. And for that reason, I would hope that you can support this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Louise Gibbard.
Oh, thank you, Presiding Member. I'm very grateful to Councillor Holly and Councillor Black for bringing this motion forward. And I think, as they've said, first and foremost, the proposal from the government is completely unnecessary. It truly is a sledgehammer to crack a nut, which I think was the title of Electoral Reform Society report into this. Councillor Back has quoted some figures. I've also got the 2019 figures here. In 2019, only 58 million votes were cast, and there were just 34 instances of voter impersonation, which is what this is designed to stamp out. But if this sort of unnecessary side of it wasn't bad enough, it's also discriminatory. As Councillor Black said, 3.5 million eligible voters in the UK do not have a photo ID, and the majority of these people are from already marginalised communities who are less likely to get involved in the democratic process and arguably need the democratic process the most. People on lower incomes, younger people, the homeless, those in temporary or rented accommodation, people from ethnic minority backgrounds. Buying a driver's license or a passport is expensive, especially if you don't need one. And are people really going to go to the extra bother and hassle of trying to come and get an extra ID from the local authority? It will slow things down at polling stations as clerks are forced to check people against their photo ID. And it could potentially disenfranchise people whose names or faces don't match what's on that card, particularly women perhaps who may not have updated their ID following marriage or divorce, trans and non-binary people, in fact anyone who has aged or their appearance has changed since they had that picture taken. The government's own figures suggest that the cost of this will be in the region of £20 million. And considering this government's track record, I don't for a minute think that local authorities will be properly funded to pay for it. So another burden shifted onto local councils like ours. In my opinion, this money will be much better spent on initiatives to improve our democracy and turnout, helping the 9 million people who aren't currently on the electoral roll to register, for example, to extend the franchise to 16 and 17-year-olds and foreign citizens registered here like we've done in Wales, or a range of schemes that could be brought in to make it easier to vote rather than more difficult. So unnecessary and discriminatory and a complete waste of money, and as Councillor Black has said, potentially designed to suppress voters from backgrounds who might not necessarily be going to vote Conservative in the first place. So I very much support this motion.
Thank you, Louise. Councillor Peter Jones.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I, of course, will also be supporting strongly this motion. The Councillors Holly, Black and Gibbard have already set out in some detail particular concerns in relation to the ID card proposal and indeed why it is such a nonsense. But of course the motion also references other proposals in the Queen's speech, the effect of which will be to reduce our democracy, reduce people's ability to contribute in elections and in other ways. And I would like to just focus on those for one moment. I mean, this motion draws attention to what is this government's total disregard for democratic engagement and accountability. And we've seen this in so many ways over the period, particularly since the present administration was elected back in 2019. For example, in addition to the ID proposal, there are suggestions for redrawing. We know that constituency boundaries are under consideration for redrawing, and all the indications are that those redrawing arrangements will in all probability benefit the ruling Conservative Party at the expense of other parties. There's a concern there. Another concern relates to the electoral system. As we know, most of our votes are undertaken under first past the post, a system which I would like to see replaced by some form of proportional representation. But the government is proposing to remove the proportionality in the elections for the London Mayor. It's proposing, as I understand it, to remove the proportionality for Police and Crime Commissioner elections. In other words, the government is trying to promote first past the post, which it knows favours itself against proportional representation, which would favour other and minority parties. Another example of disregard for democracy. We know that Boris Johnson's administration tried to prorogue Parliament some time back in order to prevent debate. And of course, they then had to be overruled by the Supreme Court. The government had acted illegally, and the Supreme Court, thank goodness, overruled them and forced them to withdraw that particular proposal. We note, or I note, that this government, on its completion, abolished the Select Committee on Brexit, ensuring that informed and critical debate around the Brexit issue and around the government's performance on Brexit would not take place. Another example of disregard for democracy. We note the Police, Crime, Sentencing and Courts Bill, the purpose of which is further to reduce public ability in a peaceful manner, I stress in a peaceful, democratic manner, to express concern about issues around the government of this country. A disgraceful proposal, a disgraceful proposal. What we're seeing, in other words, is a total disregard, not only for democracy, but for probity. This country had a reputation for probity in its politics and in its conduct of government. That's disappearing. We've seen total disregard of the ministerial code, total disregard for honesty, ministers acting in ways that under previous administrations would have led to their resignation or their being sacked. They've remained in office on numerous occasions. Effectively, this government has challenged the rule of law. This country is founded, democracy is founded on the rule of law. and we're seeing that being disregarded as well. This is a very sad situation that we face. This is a disreputable government. I hate to have to say this, but it is a disreputable government founded on dishonesty and misrepresentation. And I have to say also supported by a client press, which does its best to conceal the untruths that we have coming from the government and to uphold those untruths as in fact truths. I conclude by saying this, presiding member. Previous Conservative Prime Ministers, Harold Macmillan, all the way down, even to Margaret Thatcher, if they would never have conducted government in this way. I don't believe they would. Too dishonest for them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Everyone has been circulated with times allowed for speaking. Can I ask you to adhere to them, please? Councillor Lyndon Jones.
Great, thank you very much. I found the comments by Councillor Peter Jones quite interesting. I think he forgets that the UK Conservative government was elected by a huge majority not that long ago. And you know, you shouldn't forget it. Whatever the scale of voter theft, it should be stamped out. We see voter ID as a safeguard and a responsible measure to protect people's votes. In short, it will protect voters from having their votes stolen. And as I say, whatever that scale. And of course, we mustn't forget that it is being used in a part of the UK today, in Northern Ireland. And that was implemented in 2003 by a Labour government. And that there is no evidence there that this has affected turnout. So, you know, quite frankly, to protect votes should be the best outcome in every election. And what we need to do, and I agree with some comments, we need to encourage people to get out and vote and ensure that they do use those voter ID cards. But the bottom line is there has been no evidence in Northern Ireland that it has affected turnout. Thank you, presiding member.
Thank you, Lyndon. Councillor Steve Gallagher.
Yes, thank you, presiding member. I'd like to make a comment, if I may, about the first line of the motion in relation to a crackdown on people's ability to protest. As many of you know, as a former senior police officer, I've been involved in a number of protests, both on the front line and in the command situation. And the difficulty we have is balancing the rights of protest and the rights of those who wish to go about their normal daily business. And what we can't allow is the protest to stop people managing their own daily business, whatever that may be, whether it be outside Parliament, whether it be outside a council building, or whether it be outside a shop in any of the city centres. I believe firmly in protest, but I also believe firmly that we must be allowed to carry out our normal day-to-day business. And the way that this is put, it is not to crack down on people's rights to protest, but it is to crack down on those who wish to disrupt. And there is a difference in that, and we must recognise that difference. Thank you, presiding member.
Thank you, Steve. And Councillor David Hopkins.
Sorry, presiding member. I was going to come in and ask. I'm sure that this is going to be voted by all parties, but obviously not tonight. I'm very disappointed to hear that, and I'm sure that you know, let's be honest, there's £20 million to be spent. There's only one place it should be spent on improving accessibility on polling days and try to ensure that we can reach the minorities of people, not try to exclude. So I'm really feel left down with the stance of the Conservative group. I'm very happy to support this notice of motion, and I think it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, David. I've got a couple more now. Councillor Mark Child.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to correct something that Councillor Lyndon Jones said. He said that they had an overwhelming majority of the vote at the last election. The Conservative Party, they actually had 43.6% of the vote cast in Britain at the last election, which by anybody's measure is not an overwhelming vote of support. So I can see why they would be against any move to PR and like to row back on it, which is about giving everybody vote a fair vote. I wasn't going to speak on this, but I think you've got to ask why they are doing it, because this isn't to ensure voter ID works properly and everybody's allowed to vote. We've got a pretty universal and pretty successful way of voting at the moment, certainly as far as turnout and ability to go. This is regression. This is reducing the democracy in our country by attempting to prevent, as I think it was Peter Black said, people registering to vote or going to vote in the first place. And it's an attempt to prevent protests and people legitimately protesting by expanding the boundaries of what going about your normal business means, as opposed to having the right to protest. It's an innate right of British people to protest, which is being undermined here. It's an innate right of British people to vote, which is being undermined here. And I think anybody who believes in a fair Britain, a fair Wales, will vote for this proposal. And I thank Councillor Holly and Black for bringing it to us.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Alison Pugh.
Yeah, like Councillor Tyler, I wasn't going to speak, and I thought Louise and Peter and people had said it all for me, but I would just like to say, without repeating everything that people have said, that in times like we are now, where poverty is at such a dreadful level, the thought of adding extra burdens to people to have to pay for IDs is just scandalous. And we, as a country, as a nation, have the right to protest. I understand the police have to keep people safe and all that sort of stuff, but we have a right. We are a democratic country, and we have the rights to be able to do things. And this is sadly a typical Conservative response to try and clamp us down in every direction. But my main point tonight, Chair, is that I would like a named vote, please, because this is just shocking.
Thank you, Alison. So it hasn't met the criteria. No, they can dictate that.
More than 10 now.
Things are not come through late, so
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
I'd accept that. We can't do it as in the chamber. Can you understand that?
No.
Okay, Councillor Chris Holly to respond. Chris.
Thank you very much, Presiding Member. About a name vote, I know we record the vote on this particular on Teams, so whilst I totally agree with the name vote, I think I can understand why on this occasion, when we record it, the public will see who's in favour of democracy and who isn't. I am bitterly disappointed, really bitterly disappointed that Councillor Lyndon Jones brings up something which was in the Good Friday Agreement about a problem that existed in Northern Ireland. I don't know if he's aware of the history where that if you lived in a rented house, you could not vote. And that's what part of the problem started back in the 60s. And I think, in all honesty, Councillor Jones, I had more respect for you before today. I think what you're bringing up there is despicable. And I think, with respect, I think you should apologise to us for bringing up something which brought peace to a troubled place. And I am really, really disappointed with what you said. And to you, Councillor Gallagher, I understand where you come from. I understand what you were saying. There is a managed responsibility. We do expect the police to go into places which are dangerous and what have you. But we also do expect the police to act in a responsible manner, and also to manage some of the crowds that are in these demonstrations. But you cannot remove the right for people to demonstrate. You cannot remove that right, because then you're actually cracking down in a way which would be, in a totalitarian state. That's what you have. I find it very difficult to close this notice of motion, having heard what I've heard from some of my colleagues in the Conservative group, I am absolutely dumbfounded by the comments made by Councillor Jones, and I move this notice of motion, and I wish that everybody would support it, but it's obviously not going to be the case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Well, that's the response by the mover of the motion. Ready for the vote, Gareth?
Yep, I'm calling the members' names out.
Just to clarify the issue, I understand that the request for the recorded vote didn't meet the criteria.
No, I think it did. I think there were more than 10 named people that came up that showed their hands. It was just the delay in it reaching us our end.
Yeah.
So we will have a name vote.
Yep. So does that mean we should go through call the names of the people?
Yeah, I'll do it individually. I got the list there. So.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cyril Anderson.
4.
Councillor Peter Black.
4.
Councillor June Burtonshaw.
4.
Councillor Mark Child.
4.
Councillor Jan Curtis.
4.
Councillor Nick Davis.
4.
Councillor Mike Day.
4.
Councillor Phil Downing.
4.
Ryland Doyle.
4.
Mike Dirk.
4.
Kerry Evans is not present. Mandy Evans.
4.
Will Evans.
4.
Wendy Fitzgerald. Councillor Fitzgerald. No, okay. Councillor Francis Davis.
4.
Councillor Gallagher.
Against.
Councillor Louise Gibbard.
4.
Councillor Fiona Gordon.
4.
Councillor Kevin Griffiths.
4.
Councillor Joe Hale. Councillor Hale. No, he's not present. Councillor David Halliwell.
Against.
Councillor Terry Hennigan.
4.
Councillor Chris Hawley.
4.
Councillor Paxton Hood Williams.
Against.
Councillor Bev Hopkins.
4.
David Hopkins.
4.
Oliver James.
4.
Linda James. Councillor Linda James. We'll come back. Councillor Yvonne Jardine.
4.
Councillor Jeff Jones.
4.
Councillor Lyndon Jones.
Against.
Councillor Mary Jones.
4.
Councillor Matthew Jones.
4.
Councillor Peter Jones.
4.
Councillor Sue Jones.
4.
Councillor Elliot King.
4.
Just go back to Councillor Wendy Fitzgerald. No, she's left. And Councillor Linda James. Councillor James, you're on mute. No, okay. Councillor Erica Kirshner.
4.
Councillor Miles Langston.
Against.
Councillor Hannah Lawson.
4.
Councillor Andrea Lewis.
4.
Councillor Mike Lewis.
4.
Richard Lewis, not present. Wendy Lewis.
4.
Clive Lloyd.
4.
Paul Lloyd.
4.
Irene Mann. Councillor Irene Mann. Present. Councillor Penny Matthews.
4.
Councillor Peter May.
4.
Councillor Hazel Morris.
4.
Councillor David Phillips, not present. Councillor Cheryl Philpott.
4.
Councillor Sam Pritchard.
4.
Councillor Alison Pugh.
4.
Councillor Jennifer Rayner.
4.
Christine Richards not present. Kelly Roberts.
For.
Bridget Rowlands.
Against.
Mary Sherwood not present. Paulette Smith not present. Robert Smith.
For.
Andrew Stevens not present. Leader not present. Gareth Sullivan.
For.
Gloria Tanner.
For.
Councillor Des Thomas. For. Graham Thomas.
For.
Mark Thomas.
For.
Will Thomas.
Against.
Linda Taylor Lloyd.
Against.
Gordon Walker.
For.
Leslie Walton.
For.
And Mike White.
For.
Okay. 8 against. It's 52 for, 8 against, no abstentions. Sure.
Okay, that's carried. That concludes our agenda for today. Thank you all for your attendance. I declare the
Presiding
meeting-
member, I wondered if I could possibly say something. There is a saying, I'm not sure where it is, but if you don't stand